Hello again, everyone. This is Mr. E, and this is Unit 6, Divisibility Rules for 2, 5, and 10. Lesson 2 is 2, 5, and 10. Lesson 3 will be 3 and 9. And it's also important that you not only know the rules, but you be able to explain your reasoning in using the rules. So, for example, simplify the fraction 55 1/20. The reason would be, or one way to state your reasoning would be, the ones place in 55 is a 5 and the ones place in 120 is a 0. Therefore, according to the rule, 55 and 120 are both divisible by 5. That means that 5 is a common factor of 55 and 120. All right, so we're going to use some really good logical reasoning, some good language to explain what we're doing. Let's get started. All right, so divisibility rules could easily be called divisibility patterns. And what we mean by divisibility is when I divide the number, there's no remainder. So divisible by means I don't have a remainder. So the multiples of 2. Do you notice a pattern in the multiples of 2? Let's look at it a little bit closer. Answer this question for me. All the multiples of 2 have what number or numbers in the ones place? All the multiples of 2 have either a 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0 in the ones place. So our divisibility rule for 2. If a number has a 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, or 2, 4, 6, or 8 in the ones place, then the number is divisible by 2. That means I can divide by 2 and have no remainder. In other words, 2 is a factor of any number that has a 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8 in the ones place. Let's do an example and use our reasoning. Let's simplify the fraction 26/30. So here's an example of reasoning. Doesn't have to be exactly like this, but here's an example. I noticed that the ones place in 26 is 6 and the ones place in 30 is 0. Therefore, a common factor is 2. I can simplify by 2. Let's back do that. So 26/30 divide by 2, divide by 2, 13/15. Now, doesn't mean we're done all the time, but in this case we are, because 13 is prime, and the only common factor between 13 and 15 is 1, so we are in our lowest terms. Okay, that was the divisibility rule for number 2. For 2, let's look at 10. Here are the multiples of 10. Do you notice a pattern in the multiples of 10? Let's look a little closer. All the multiples of 10 have a what in the ones place? They have a 0. So our divisibility rule for 10 is, if the ones place is a 0, then the number is divisible by 10. I mean, I can divide that number by 10 and I will have no remainder. In other words, 10 is a factor of any number that has a 0 in the ones place. And a little note here, another way of showing your reasoning is if, then. Let's go ahead and apply that. So 70 110ths. One way you can apply your reasoning is, I notice that the ones place in both 70 and 110 is 0. Therefore, both 70 and 110 are divisible by 10. I can simplify by 10. So I take 70 1/10. I divide both numerator and denominator by 10. And I get 7/10 is my answer. The word therefore means for that reason. So again, we want to do two things. We want to understand and apply divisibility rules. I want to be able to explain ourselves with clear reasoning. So we can use the word therefore when we reason. Okay, the rules for 5. We'll go through those real quickly. The multiples of 5. Notice a pattern. And we saw this in an introduction. All the multiples of 5 have a blank or a blank in the ones place. What's your answer? A 0 or 5. So our divisibility for 5 is if there's a 0 or 5 in the ones place, then the number is divisible by 5, no remainder. In other words, 5 is a factor of any number that has a 0 or 5 in the ones place. I know we're running a little bit longer than usual. We'll wrap this up. So let's use your reasoning to apply the rule. Let's simplify the fraction 75 1/10. We notice there's a 5 or 0 in the ones place. That means that they're both divisible by 5. So one way we can simplify is by 5. That'll be 15, 22. And that's as low as we can get there. All right, so a quick review. Divisibility rule for 2, 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8 in the ones place. Divisibility rule for 10, a 0 in the ones place. Divisibility rule for 5, a 0 or 5. Divisible by. Another way you can say that is a 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8, then that means that 2 is a factor of. If there's a 0 in the tens place, a factor of. If there's a 0 or 5, 5 is a factor of. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go through this, finish this up for me, and we'll talk about the answers in the next video.